it would be very awkward if all of a sudden Trump supporters were showing up at Kramer Books and hoping to like hobnob with the rest of us. But the reality is they're finding other places to get their drinks. You know.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's just like it's just the internet. And but I mean that makes sense. I've heard people call DC as everyone's a little bit of a wonk in DC. Everyone. And
don't forget the international community as well. We've got a huge amount. I mean, I teach sometimes at American University, which is where I got my MFA, and that's a huge component that we have all of this permeability by people from other countries, other parts of the world.
Now, on your teaching, you said you were kind of wary of it at first in your program, but now obviously you teach sometimes in American, but you also. I forgot to mention this in your introduction, but you also teach at the Tampa Low Res MFA, right?
Yeah.
What is that like working in a low res? Because I believe your MFA was in a full-time
residency. Yeah. No, I've really become a believer in the model of what a low res can offer, especially in the ways in which it allows people who have made larger life commitments, whether it be family, whether it be care for an elder, whether it be not only a full-time job, but a full-time job that is very place-based. If it creates a space where they can be mentored and pursue their art, I really, I think the idea, much in the way that we have slowly but surely gotten over the idea that online journals were somehow a second tier to print journals, I think another 10 years from now we're going to be over this kind of, unfortunately, niggling reminder of, oh yeah, low res, like that's somehow second tier to, and that's just not the way. It's just that it's a different way to approach it, different advantages, different disadvantages. So, my stance on teaching is that I have to find the balance so that it nourishes me as a writer, so that it doesn't smother me as a writer. And so, for example, with my Tampa work, I very actively convert the seminars that I do and the dialogues I have with students into craft essays that I hope will be part of a collection that I publish in another 5 years or so. So I really, when I don't just teach in an organic moment-to-moment response to the student work. I am trying to craft ideas about writing that are then part of my legacy as a writer. And that's what makes it work for me.
Yeah. So students beware, if your teacher is a writer, be careful what you say to them. They might publish you in 5 years.
No, those are going to be craft essays, not personal essays. Not my confessional tell-all of my disasters as a teacher. I'm sure I have a few.
So I always we've talked about a lot of stuff in your life and your development and stuff, but I always like to ask this because I'm always curious. What sort of poetry, books, you don't necessarily have to have read only poetry, poets don't. What sort of do you like to read? What authors do you like, do you appreciate, do you recommend?
Gosh.
And this is always the hardest question of the interview.
Isn't it?
Whenever I ask these people.
We freeze up because our eyes picture these just stacks and stacks and stacks of books we have, both read and unread. I try to vary between the poets who I'm close to and contemporaries of, and therefore reap the benefits of reading their work in sustained real time, right? So I learn a lot by following the work of someone like Erica Meitner or Kyle Dargan or someone who I came up with. But then that has to be counterbalanced by reminding myself of, I have to engage with, for example, William Carlos Williams, go back and really spend time with his work. Gwendolyn Brooks, looking at the transitions in her work. I really do try to move back and forth so that I don't just kind of hunker down in the contemporary. Probably my quote-unquote guilty pleasure reading otherwise is just, I really love cultural histories. I love nonfiction that's a research stuff about the world. I love food writing. John McPhee or Kevin Young is a great example of a poet who does really smart, interesting cultural histories. He's got a new book called Bunk that's on hoaxes and lies throughout history. I just try to be, I'm pretty voracious. if you're ever looking for a great book club, the Rumpus has some wonderful monthly subscription models, which is really how the Rumpus survives as an online journal. And you just get a book every month that you're glad to know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also have a book club in D.C. that is all women writers, and we only read books of nonfiction by women. So, I mean, for example, we read The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. Just kind of... I don't know why I had not read it before, but I had, and just it's great to have that dialogue with people who really know their craft, who know their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, when you have to be voracious when you're writing, but also that speaks to the necessity of community in writing. It's something that MFAs are kind of supposed to foster. Low res or non, they're all foster that sort of community. But it's something that even if you don't have access, you need to probably most people try to find or should find.
Yeah, and you have to differentiate between the chatter of social media from the conversations that really build a community, because it's very easy to feel like, oh, but I've been in touch with the outside world because you put up a post that got 15 or 50 likes on it. But that's not, that's probably not going to be the affirmation and the questions and the answers that sustain you as a writer. Yeah.
Okay, so last question. Are you currently working on anything?
Yeah, probably two main things that come to mind. The first is I have an anthology that will be published this fall with the University of Georgia Press.
Okay.
It's called Vinegar and Char, Verse from the Southern Foodways Alliance. And so it's not my poetry, but it's a book that I've edited and written an introduction for and curated for the Southern Foodways Alliance of amazing poems that are all by living American poets that are capturing Southern food traditions. And I'm just really proud of it. So we're in the fun stage of design and cover art and really thinking ahead.
Yeah.
So that will be the activity of my kind of author in the world persona. And then as a poet, I'm just moving towards that fourth collection, writing poems that are looking closely at American history, particularly in the region that I grew up in, revisiting the lore we attach to vaunted figures like presidents and complicating those stories. It's just growing up in the shadow of a military culture as well, because my father's role in the Army. So I'm just really kind of getting into it, and that is both a joy and a hassle, as all poetry writing is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for letting me talk to you. Where can listeners find your work anywhere online? Or connect with you online somewhere?
Sure, I'm eminently Googleable. I have a website, sandrabeasley.com. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. I would just encourage, there's lots of ways of tracking down my books, but there's some really great independent bookstores all over, but in particular, Square Books and Politics and Prose are two that come to mind that ship. So, just keep supporting your independent bookstores wherever you are. And heck, if you want me to come your way, drop me an email. Have a car, have couch to crash on, we'll travel. And thanks so much for your good questions today.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Here's Beasley reading her poem called Ukulele.
The vessel is simple, a rowboat among yachts. No one hides a Tommy gun in its case. No bluesman runs over his uke in a whiskey rage. The last of the Hawaiian queens translated the name Gift That Came Here, while the Portuguese historians translate Jumping Flea, the way a player's fingers pick and fly. If you have a cigar box, it'll do. If you have fishing line, it'll sing. If there is to be one instrument of love, not love vanished or imagined, but love, it's this one. Fit a melody in the crook of your arm and strum.
And we're back, guys. Hope you enjoyed that, and hope you enjoyed that excerpt of Sandra's writing. As always, there'll be links to her work and some more examples of her reading and writing on the show notes for this.
but we all want to do one more bit of news after that. I remember a couple episodes ago, or maybe 10 episodes ago, I'm not sure what number it was, I did a recap of the Hugos, which are the international awards for sci-fi fantasy. Well, the American version, the Nebulas, just released their nominees for 2018. Bridget, have you read about the Nebulas at all?
I've seen the list. I checked out the list.
Yeah, it's
a lot of them are ones that are on. I haven't read most of these, but they are on my reading list. So a lot of them are. So that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's a cool thing. Basically, the Nebulas, for those of you who don't know, they are put on by the Science Fiction Writers of America, which is an organization I'd love to join, but it requires you to be published. So you have to, get published, join the SWFA. But unlike the Hugos, which are voted on by attendees of Worldcon, so, average con goer, the Nebulas are voted on by the members themselves. So they are purely a industry-driven selection process. So they tend to be shifted a little bit more towards the less popular. Obviously, these are good books and popular books, but they won't always best sell. And they sometimes have a more literary focus. And, there's a big debate in the industry as to which is better, Hugo or Nebula. But I'm 99% sure that if you ask anybody who's won one or both, that it doesn't matter. When you win one, it's a big deal. So,
right.
This is obviously one of those pinnacles in the genre. But they've got a few awards. They award Best Novel, Best Novella, Best Novelette.
What is the difference between a novella and a novelette?
So, a novella... it's weird.
Maybe that's a different thing to get into.
A novella is between... so a novelette is 7,500 to 17,500 words. A novella is somewhere between, I believe, about 18K and like 30 or 40.
Oh, so it's just a difference of size.
Yeah,
okay.
And then a novel would be 50K and up.
Right.
That's kind of why NaNoWriMo is 50K, because that's kind of the industry standard for
like minimum a novel could be. Yeah.
So, but yeah, novellas are a lot more common because the line between short story and novelette is teeny weeny. And most of the novelettes that are nominated here appeared in journals. They're
right.
But they're just sort of a way, I guess, to reward longer stuff over shorter stuff because it all varies. There's also a YA and Dramatic Presentation Award. And then there is a Best Game Award Best Game Writing Award coming out, but that hasn't been released yet, the nominee.
Yeah,
so
cool.
That's new for this year. So Best Novel nominees, we've got Amberloff, I don't know. The title is just Amberlow. It's hard to tell. I don't know how British it's supposed to be. By Laura Elena Donnelly. The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin, which won a Hugo. And Jemisin has just been cleaning up.
I know. I've been meaning to read her for so long.
Yeah.
Or him? Her or him?
Her.
Okay.
Yeah. She's really, really, really talented. I believe she's like a trained sociologist, something in the social sciences, African-American woman. Kind of later in her writing career than most with her debut novels. But they are kick-ass, and they are kicking ass. Awesome. I would not be surprised if she wins this one, too. She won back-to-back Hugos for the first time. Anybody's ever done that. And then 6 Weeks by Mur Lafferty, who, by the way, hosts the You should be right. I should be writing podcast, which is a big inspiration for this show. She's really good, and if you want to hear the thought processes of a much more successful writer than me, or then go listen to that. But also listen to this podcast. Don't give us up. Jade City by Fonda Lee and